Hello, everyone. The story I'm going to tell you tonight is a true story that happened in January 2025. On the other side of the world, in Los Angeles, USA. This is not just a story about wildfires. It's a drama of courage, hope, and hearts brought together as one. Close your eyes and imagine. California's warm sunshine, palm-lined beaches, Hollywood's glamorous streets. But suddenly, a hellish disaster struck this beautiful city. The morning of January 7, 2025, was an ordinary Tuesday. People were drinking coffee and getting ready for work. But suddenly, the sky turned orange. Just like a scene from a movie. In fact, this story begins a week earlier, on January 1, New Year's Day. A man named Jonathan Lindernet was working as an Uber driver, spending New Year's Eve. He was doing the ordinary work of safely taking drunk people home. After dropping off his last passenger in a neighborhood called Pacific Palisades, he did something strange. He went up to a nearby trail. And he took out a barbecue lighter from his pocket. No one knows why he did it. Was he drunk? Or was there another reason? Lindernet, who started the fire, ran away. But he came back a little later and watched the firefighters put out the fire. This fire burned about 1 man pyong, about 25 acres, and was extinguished. It was called the Lachman Fire. The firefighters thought they had completely put out the fire. But they didn't know. Deep in the ground, between the tree roots, a small ember was still alive. In English, this kind of fire is called a holdover fire, or zombie fire. It means fire that seems dead but is alive. Like zombies in movies, it's a scary fire that can wake up again at any time. A week later, on January 7th, a special wind began to blow in Los Angeles. Its name the Santa Ana Winds. Do you know what Santa Ana winds are, everyone? These are special winds that blow every winter in California. These winds from the desert are very dry and hot. And above all, extremely strong. On the morning of January 7th, Weather Service employees were surprised. Looking at their computer screens, the forecast showed winds would blow from 100 to 160 kilometers per hour. This is typhoon level. Imagine. If you're standing and a wind as strong as a typhoon blows? It would be hard to walk. Small objects would fly away. And this wind dropped the humidity to below 10%. Do you know how dry 10% humidity is? Drier than the desert. Trees and grass became crispy like dry cookies. Moreover, there was almost no rain in the winter of 2024. Normally, California is a place where it rains a lot in winter, but that year was different. Scientists say this is because of climate change. So to summarize, crispy dry trees and grass, typhoon-level strong winds, air drier than the desert. On top of this, the zombie fire, hidden in the ground, was added. It was the perfect combination for disaster. Around 10:30 a.m. on January 7th, someone called 911. Hello. There's a fire in Palisades. At first, it was a small fire. About 10 acres, about 12,000 pyong. The size of 10 soccer fields. It seemed big, but for a wildfire, it was small. But 3 hours later, the situation completely changed. The wind pushed the flames. The fire moved like a living monster. In terms of meters per second, it spread about 1 meter at a time. 3 soccer fields burned in 1 minute. When the firefighters arrived, they were horrified. Flames rose 20, 30 meters high. A pillar of fire the height of a 10-story apartment building shot up into the sky. One firefighter later said, "I've been a firefighter for 30 years, but I've never seen fire like that. It was like a dragon spreading its wings." What was even scarier was that embers flew in the wind. Small embers broke away from the big fire and flew on the wind for hundreds of meters, sometimes more than 1 kilometer. And wherever they fell, new fires started. This is a phenomenon called spot fire. Embers fall everywhere and fires start here and there. It was a nightmare situation where firefighters were putting out the fire in front, and new fires were starting behind. While the fire was spreading in Palisades, at 6:30 p.m. the same evening, another fire started in a different area. It was in Eaton Canyon in a neighborhood called Altadena. This fire was also small at first, but the same strong wind was blowing, and it was equally dry. Now Los Angeles had to fight 2 giant fires. One was the Palisades fire on the west coast. The other was the Eaton fire in the eastern mountains. And this wasn't all. On January 9, the Kenneth Fire started, and on January 22, the Hughes Fire broke out. A total of 14 large and small fires began burning around Los Angeles at the same time. Firefighters didn't know where to start blocking. This was like a battlefield. On the afternoon of January 7, the Los Angeles Police and Fire Department issued an emergency evacuation order. All residents evacuate immediately. Your lives are in danger. Sirens wailed. Emergency text messages arrived on every cell phone. People were terrified. One mother recalled, "I woke up the children, and outside the window was orange. The whole sky seemed to be burning." The children asked, "Mom, what's happening? Why is the sky like this?" I pretended to be calm and said, "It's okay, we're going for a short drive," but I was really scared too. People hurriedly packed. What should they take? Clothes? Food? Money? Many people grabbed family photos and precious memories. One grandfather took a picture of his deceased wife. And one girl came out holding a doll she'd had since childhood. But the roads were completely blocked. Los Angeles is a city with complicated traffic even normally. But when 200,000 people drove out at the same time, it was chaos. The roads became parking lots. Some people abandoned their cars and ran away on foot. The sight of abandoned cars lined up on the highway was like a scene from a movie. One man said, "The car couldn't move 100 meters in 1 hour. When I looked back, the whole sky was red. I could see the fire getting closer. I got out of the car and started running. I left my phone, wallet, everything in the car. I just wanted to live." The real heroes of this disaster were the firefighters. On the first day, January 7th, the Los Angeles Fire Department deployed all the manpower they had. But it wasn't enough. 14 fires were breaking out at the same time, but firefighters were limited. When morning came, help came from across the country, no, from around the world. 165 fire helicopters and firefighters came from Canada. Firefighters flew in from Mexico too. Even the Iranian Red Crescent Society offered help. Within the United States, 12 Native American tribes sent fire teams. Firefighters gathered from 8 states. Even prisoners incarcerated in prisons came out as volunteers to fight fires. One Canadian firefighter said, "We have different borders and languages, but in front of fire, we are all one. If people are in danger, we must go." Fire helicopters scooped up water from the ocean and sprayed it over the fires. But the wind was so strong that the water didn't fall properly. The water droplets scattered in the wind. On the ground, firefighters tried hard to protect each house. But the fire was too fast. A firefighter was protecting a house. And the house next door was already burning. Some firefighters fought for 36 hours without rest. They couldn't sleep, couldn't eat properly. They were heroes. On January 8, an astonishing problem was revealed. Water wasn't coming out of the fire hydrants. There were many fire hydrants in the Palisades area. But when too many hydrants were used at the same time, the water pressure dropped. Some hydrants had no water coming out at all. Why did this happen? According to experts' explanations, the city's water system was originally made to prepare for when one or two houses caught fire. But this time, hundreds of houses were burning at the same time. The system couldn't handle it. Later, a UCLA University research team announced, no matter how much water there was, it wouldn't have been possible to stop a fire of this scale. The most important thing is preventing fires from starting. But at the scene at the time, this was a great frustration. Firefighters had to fight the fire without water. By the end of January, the scale of the damage began to be revealed. In numbers, it's like this. Burned area approximately 57,529 acres, about 70,427,002 pyong. Destroyed buildings more than 18,000. Evacuated people more than 200,000. Official deaths 31. But research later published by a Boston University research team was shocking. They announced that actual deaths were estimated to reach at least 440. How could there be such a difference? Official deaths only counted people who died directly from the fire. But people who went to the hospital after inhaling smoke and passed away. People who had heart attacks from the shock of losing their homes. People who passed away for other reasons while evacuating were left out. The research team confirmed with data that 440 more people died during that period than usual. One grandmother collapsed from a heart attack watching her house burn. One grandfather's lungs became bad from inhaling smoke. And he passed away in the hospital a month later. These people are also victims of the wildfire. The fire was completely suppressed on January 31. But the disaster didn't end. Smoke and ash covered all of Los Angeles. The air quality index exceeded 200. To explain how bad this is, normally 50 or below is good air. Over 100 is bad for sensitive people. Over 200 is a very harmful level for everyone. Some areas had an air quality index of 184, which was 37 times worse than the World Health Organization standard. Schools closed. People wore masks. Warnings were issued for children, elderly, and pregnant women not to go outside. What was even scarier were the substances in the smoke. Heavy metals like lead, copper, and chromium mixed into the smoke as houses burned. Toxic chemicals came out as plastic burned. Carcinogens spread into the air as old paint burned. The CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, later announced the concentration of lead in the air during the wildfire period was 110 times higher than usual. The ocean was also polluted. When it rained, ash and pollutants washed into the ocean with the rainwater. When environmental groups tested the seawater, heavy metals like lead, copper, chromium, nickel, and beryllium came out much higher than usual. Experts warned, "We don't yet know the long-term effects of this pollution, but it can cause respiratory diseases, cardiovascular diseases, even cancer." People were angry. Couldn't this huge disaster have been prevented? Why weren't we prepared? Who should take responsibility? Several problems were revealed. First, the electric company's problem. There's an electric company called Southern California Edison. When strong winds blow, they should cut the electricity for safety. Electric lines can break or collide and cause fires. But many people complained they couldn't live without electricity. So the company hesitated and ultimately didn't cut the electricity. This may have made the fire bigger. Second, the fire department's lack of preparation. The Los Angeles Fire Department lacked helicopters. They had 50, but 31 of them were old helicopters more than 20 years old. There were only 539 specialized wildfire fighting teams. And they hadn't hired a single additional person in 2 years. It's because of insufficient budget. This was the answer from city officials. Third, urban planning problems. Areas like Palisades and Altadena are wildland-urban interface areas. Simply put, places where houses and forests are right next to each other. 1/3 of California residents live in such areas. Living in beautiful nature is good, but the wildfire risk is also high. Experts have been warning for a long time. Don't build more houses in these places. If a wildfire breaks out, it can't be stopped. But people kept building houses. Because the land is expensive and the scenery is beautiful. In October, police arrested Jonathan Lindernet. The 29-year-old is charged with deliberately setting fire on January 1. The small fire he set grew into a huge disaster a week later. But people say, we can't blame just one person. The entire system was the problem. But even in this dark story, there was light of hope. The whole world helped Los Angeles. Quebec Province in Canada sent a special fire plane called the CL-415. This plane can fly low over lakes or the ocean and scoop up water. And it pours a huge amount of water over the fire. Mexico sent firefighters from the National Forestry Commission and the Department of Defense. They arrived at Los Angeles Airport on January 12. People welcomed them at the airport and cried, "When our neighbors are in trouble, we help." One Mexican firefighter said. The Iranian Red Crescent Society also offered to send an emergency rescue team. The United States and Iran are not on good terms politically. But in front of disaster, such things didn't matter. Ontario Province in Canada sent 2 water bombers, 165 urban firefighters, and an incident management team. Fire trucks, ambulances, and medical staff gathered from across the country. Ordinary citizens also helped. Some people made food and brought it to firefighters. And some people gave their homes to evacuated people. One restaurant owner made 500 meals every day and provided them free to firefighters. My restaurant didn't burn. The firefighters protected it. Now it's my turn to help them. On January 31, the last fire was completely suppressed. The 24-day war was over. But now was the real beginning. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, investigated nearly 14,000 damaged sites. They had to find and remove hazardous chemicals. Houses burned by fire have dangerous substances like asbestos, lead, and toxic paint. If you leave this, people can't come back and live. 1,600 employees were deployed. They removed all hazardous materials in just 29 days. It was the largest wildfire cleanup operation in EPA history. The water system also had to be restored. 8 of the 9 public water systems returned to normal. But one is still being restored. People slowly began to return. But for many people, there was no home to return to. Shall we hear one family's story? The Kim family pseudonym lived in Palisades for 30 years. Their house was a beautiful 3-story house. In the garden, roses that their daughter planted when she was young were growing. On January 7, they hurriedly evacuated and only took a few photo albums. "We thought we'd be back soon," says the mother. When they went to the house a month later with permission, there was nothing there, only blackened traces remained. The drawings my daughter drew when she was young. The necklace my grandmother gave me, the fishing rod my dad used. Everything disappeared, the daughter said, crying. But they didn't give up. The house can be rebuilt. It's a miracle that we're alive, the father said. Countless heroes were born in this disaster. The story of a firefighter named Ramon. Ramon is a California firefighter. He didn't rest a single day from January 7th to 31st. One day, he heard a dog barking in a house that was about to burn. The owner couldn't take the dog while evacuating. Ramon ran into the flames. Smoke was thick and he couldn't see ahead. But he followed the barking sound. Finally, he found a golden retriever trapped in the bathroom. Ramon carried the dog out. Right after he came out, the house collapsed. I met the owner later, and they hugged me crying. That dog was family they'd lived with for 15 years. That's when I remembered why I became a firefighter. The story of a grandmother named Maria. Grandmother Maria is 82 years old. She was living alone. An evacuation order was issued, but Maria didn't have a car. It was too far to evacuate on foot. Jason, a young college student neighbor, knew this. He first evacuated his own family in his car, then came back and found Maria. "Grandmother, get in quickly." Jason put Maria and her 2 cats in his car. The road was already blocked, and the fire was getting closer. Jason crossed the mountain through an unpaved road. He drove on bumpy roads for 1 hour and came to a safe place. Later, a reporter asked, "It must have been dangerous, why did you go back?" Jason said, "I couldn't just leave grandmother. If it were my grandmother, I would have wanted someone to do that." The children's donation story. 2nd graders in an elementary school saw the wildfire news on TV. "Teacher, can we help too?" The teacher started selling lemonade with the children. They sold lemonade in the neighborhood for 1 weekend. The children held handwritten signs. "Please help LA wildfire victims." Surprisingly, people lined up. Lemonade was $1, but some people gave $100. That weekend, the children raised $12,450. The teacher was also surprised. "We will donate all this money to organizations helping wildfire victims." They sent the money with letters the children wrote themselves. One child wrote in a letter, "I'm 8 years old. I feel sorry for people who lost their homes. This money can't build a new house, but I hope it helps a little. I'm rooting for you. Scientists studied this wildfire and discovered important facts. This wasn't a simple natural disaster. It was a disaster created by climate change. The UCLA research team explains. In the winter of 2024, California had the driest winter in history. Normally it should rain a lot at this time, but it hardly rained. Why was that? Because the Earth is getting warmer. Even if the Earth's temperature rises by just 1 degree, big changes occur. Rain patterns change, winds get stronger, and weather becomes extreme. Experts warn. In the future, wildfires like this will happen more often and bigger. If we don't prepare now, bigger disasters will come. Actually, looking at the data. In the 1970s, there was a big wildfire in California about once every 10 years. In the 2000s, it increased to once every 5 years. In the 2020s, big wildfires happen almost every year. This is not just California's problem. Australia, Greece, Turkey, Canada. Wildfires are increasing worldwide. We must protect the Earth. One scientist says, if we don't, the Earth won't protect us. In February, people slowly began to return to daily life. Schools reopened, but some schools had half the number of students. Many families moved to other cities. One teacher says, we had 30 people in our class, now there are 16. 14 lost their homes. Some children transferred to other cities, and some just don't come to school. Because the trauma is severe. Psychologists came to the school to counsel the children. Children have nightmares at night. They keep dreaming about fires. Some children cry just seeing candles. But there was also hope. The city of Los Angeles approved a recovery budget of $20 billion. About 28 trillion won. They began building temporary housing for people who lost their homes. Architects created new designs, building houses with fire-resistant materials. Roofs made of metal, walls made of specially coated concrete. Windows made of double glass to block heat. One architect says, now we must learn how to live with wildfires. We can't completely prevent wildfires. But we can reduce damage. The city also began to change. They created more space between houses. So fire doesn't spread from house to house. They also cut down trees. It's a sad thing, but it was necessary to prevent fire from spreading. They improved the water system. They installed bigger pipes, more reservoirs, stronger pumps. The fire department also changed. They purchased 50 new helicopters. They hired 1,000 more firefighters. They strengthened training programs. Next time we'll be more prepared. The fire chief promised. One day in March, a special event was held on Palisades Beach. It was a memorial service. Thousands of people gathered to remember people who were sacrificed in the fire. They planted 31 small trees on the beach, as many as the official death count. But people lit 440 candles to remember the actual number of victims. The mayor gave a speech. We will never forget this tragedy. But we will not live in fear. We will become stronger. A firefighter played the trumpet. A sad melody spread over the ocean. People cried, but they stood together, holding hands, leaning on shoulders. One grandmother stood in front of the microphone. I lived in Palisades for 60 years. I got married in this neighborhood, raised my children. Now my house is gone. But my neighbors are still here. We will start again together." People applauded, while shedding tears. What did we learn from this disaster? First, we must respect nature. We want to build houses next to forests. Because it's beautiful. But nature can also be dangerous. Wildfires, earthquakes, floods. Natural disasters can happen anytime. We must make wise choices. We must carefully think about where to build houses and how to prepare. Second, preparation is important. Prepare an emergency bag. Put in water, food, medicine, important documents, flashlight. Make an evacuation plan. Decide in advance with your family, if a fire breaks out, where will we meet? Don't think, "It won't happen to me." Disasters can come to anyone. Third, we must help each other. The most beautiful thing in this disaster was people's hearts. Canada, Mexico, Iran. The whole world helped. Neighbors saved neighbors, and children sold lemonade and donated. We are not alone. We must remember this. Fourth, we must respond to climate change. This is the most important lesson. If we continue to pollute the earth, disasters like this will happen more often and more severely. Save electricity, plant trees, reduce waste. Small actions add up to big changes. Tell adults. Please protect the earth. Demand from politicians. Please make laws that protect the environment. We are all owners of the earth. Protecting the earth is all of our responsibility. In April, rain finally fell in Los Angeles. People were happy in the rain. Children played in the rain. The rain washed away the ash. The air became clear. The sky became blue again. And an amazing thing happened. Green shoots began to sprout from the burned mountain. Nature was recovering. New life grew from land that seemed dead. A girl asked her mother, "Mom, I thought all those trees were dead. How did they come back to life?" The mother answered, "Nature is strong. Even if it seems all burned on the outside, life remains deep in the ground. And when the time comes, it rises again." Like us? Yes, like us. On Palisades Beach, new houses began to be built. Hammer sounds, saw sounds echoed. One family stood on a new house site and drew the future. The living room here, the kitchen there, in the garden. We'll plant roses that our daughter likes again. Will it be a prettier house, Dad? Of course. And it will be a safer house. Los Angeles was rising again. Slowly, but surely. Scars remained. And those scars won't heal easily. Some people will live with this memory for life. But they didn't give up. They found hope even in sadness. They discovered new shoots even in the ashes. This is human strength. The strength to get up again even after falling. Everyone, tonight's story ends here. The 2025 LA Great Fire was a tragedy. 31 people, actually estimated to be 440, lost their lives, and 18,000 houses disappeared. 200,000 people had to leave their homes. But this story is not just a story of sadness. This is a story of courage. The story of firefighters who ran into the flames. This is a story of love. The story of a young man who came back to save his neighbor. This is a story of hope. The story of children who sold lemonade and donated. And this is a story of warning. A story that tells us climate change is real, that we must act now. Before you go to bed, just remember this. Disasters come suddenly. But if we prepare, help each other, and don't lose hope, we can overcome. And love the earth. Because Earth is our only home. Look out the window. Are the stars in the night sky twinkling? Do you see peaceful streets? Don't take this peace for granted. Be grateful. And think about what we can do to protect this peace. Sweet dreams. And tomorrow morning, when you open your eyes, please remember the story you heard today. We are all connected. The fire on the other side of the world is not a distant story. It's all of our story. Let's create a better world together. Good night. This story was reconstructed based on the wildfire incident that actually occurred in Los Angeles, USA. From January 7 to 31, 2025. All major facts were based on actual news, reports and official reports, but some personal stories were created by synthesizing multiple cases.